Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The next topic for today is weekly updates from the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. And I give the floor to Mr. Alexander Hook, Principal Deputy Chief Monitor of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. Today he's speaking via Skype. Mr. Hook, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Regarding the security situation in eastern Ukraine, allow me to present a few facts. Facts established by the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, facts that speak for themselves. Last week, the OSCE SMM observed a 10% increase in the number of ceasefire violations. Last week, we counted 4,827 ceasefire violations. Last week, the OSCE SMM observed an almost ninefold increase in instances where weapons proscribed under the Minsk agreements were used. Last week, the OSCE SMM has repeatedly warned, and in the past we have repeatedly warned about the likelihood of escalation. We have repeatedly asked to remove the causes of violence, to remove the weapons, to demine, to disengage. To no avail. Last week we noted, for instance, the presence of 144 weapons that should have been withdrawn beyond agreed withdrawal lines, 49 in government-controlled and 95 in areas outside government control. We observed violations of the disengagement agreements, and we observed mines. Here, in these two images taken by our unmanned aerial vehicles near government-controlled Avdiivka and non-government-controlled Cernove, you can see that these indiscriminate weapons are on both sides of the contact line. Soon, with vegetation growing quickly, these mines and thousands of others littered across the contact line will no longer be visible. In the absence of making these mines visible through marking or fencing, which the sites have promised they will do, these hidden weapons will claim even more innocent lives. Facts of life in eastern Ukraine, facts of life that mean continued death and injury of people who just want to go on with their normal lives. Dear friends, the OSCE SMM is mandated to establish facts and report accordingly. And that is exactly what we did last week. It's what we have been doing for over 4 years now. The sides have committed to comply with the provisions of the Minsk agreements. They have clearly not. Establishing and reporting on the facts is not the problem. The fact that weapons are in violation of agreed withdrawal lines and close to urban areas is the problem. The fact that heavy weapons are being fired from and to areas close to urban areas in violation of the ceasefire is a problem. The fact that mines are still in the ground in violation of agreements is the problem. The fact that the sides refuse to disengage forces and formations in violation of an agreement the sides signed is the problem. Those firing weapons and those positioning weapons in areas in violation of agreed withdrawal lines, those laying mines, those positioning hardware and personnel in close proximity, those people, those ordering and carrying it out, they must abide by the agreements they signed. The fact is, for people in eastern Ukraine, the problem is not the reporting of facts, the problem is the facts themselves. In particular, the fact that the sides refuse to comply, that the sides refuse to implement the agreements they made, that the sides choose violence over a peaceful resolution of conflict, this fact is the problem. Dear friends, a few more facts. Last week, the OSCE SMM confirmed that 11 civilians were injured in eastern Ukraine as a direct result of the side's failure to comply with their obligations. Last week, our monitoring officers observed damage to dozens of houses or apartment buildings, the homes of ordinary men, women, and children. In just one small area of Stara Mikhailivka, within the radius of just 800 meters, our monitoring officers, for example, last week observed 13 homes damaged. Our reporting officers were at the hospital in nearby Donetsk city, where they saw a couple, both injured when artillery rounds impacted their quiet residential neighborhood in the early hours of Wednesday morning last week. Thankfully, their 4 children, who were also in the house at the time, were uninjured. At the neighbor's house, our monitoring officers met an 8-year-old girl. Her physical injuries were not severe. Our monitoring officers were unable, however, to assess what the psychological trauma may be. As a father, I do not even want to think what the effects of artillery rounds could be on a child. Let's be absolutely clear. There is a direct link between the non-compliance with the Minsk Agreement and that child's injuries. The failure of the sides to cease fire is the reason why that child has been injured. The insistence of the sides on firing weapons, especially in and around residential areas, is one of the direct causes for her injuries, and indeed the injuries and death to more than 51 other civilians, 51 men, women and children this year. The other cause of so many civilians being injured is the side's refusal to demine. Since April last year, 43 men, women and children have died, and another 120 have been injured from explosions of mines and unexploded ordnance. Among them is our colleague Joseph Stone, killed when an SMM patrol vehicle he was traveling in hit a mine in Priship on 23rd of April last year. 2 other unarmed civilian monitoring officers were also injured. Just like with artillery and mortars, mines do not discriminate. They kill and maim regardless of age, gender, occupation, or political views. Mines make no distinction between civilian and combatant. Farmers in field trying to sow and harvest are at risk. Like the ones our monitoring officers met on Saturday last week in the fields of Staro Beshove and Stila, unaware that an anti-tank mine was just meters away from them. 2 days previously, on 12 April, our monitoring officers were at the hospital in Mariupol. There they met with a man who the day before had lost his right hand when he picked up what he thought was just a piece of scrap metal in Mirne. The man told our monitoring officers that the object that caused him to lose his right hand was just a little bigger than a pen. Dear friends, the facts are clear and undisputable. The man lost his hand in Mirne because of what is known as an explosive remnant of war. The child in Staromikhailivka was injured by an artillery round. Our colleague was killed and 2 of our monitoring officers were injured in Priship almost a year ago, most probably by an anti-tank mine. There is another fact that is relevant. All these people were injured or killed because of a failure to comply with the Minsk Agreement. And as long as there is a failure to comply, so long as the weapons remain in place, so long as there is no disengagement, so long as there is no demining, so long as there are continued ceasefire violations, then more innocent people, many of them children, will continue to die. Dear friends, there are many facts. Facts about weapons in violation, facts about mines, positions of hardware and personnel, facts about ceasefire violations. All are measures of success or failure, concrete examples of the side's failure to comply, indications of intent. A sad litany of facts outlining the side's failure to protect the civilian population. The most obvious fact and the greatest indictment of those participating in, ordering it, condoning, and even encouraging the continuing violence is the number of civilian casualties. 51. Just this year. 51 times the sides have failed in what should be a duty of care, their duty of care. 51 they failed the people of Ukraine, and the number is growing. Just yesterday, we spoke to 3 civilians who sustained injuries as they were waiting at the bus stop close to the entry-exit checkpoint at Kargil. And on Tuesday this week, Water Donbassa employees were again fired upon in Yasinovata. These are the same people who for the past 4 years have, against all the odds, ensured that the Donetsk water filtration station remained operational. These are the brave men and women, despite being shot at and shelled, who have ensured that more than 300,000 people on both sides of the contact line have had clean drinking water. There are, however, limits to endurance. Tuesday's attack on these workers have left 5 of them in hospital, 1 critically injured. I can only hope and pray that all of them make a full recovery. Dear friends, it seems there are no limits anymore. An attack on the workers of the Donetsk filtration station is nothing less than an attack on over 300,000 civilians. On Wednesday this week, the Donetsk filtration station was closed and sealed, and its operation ceased. Cutting off from water is an act against the civilian population on both sides of the contact line. Are there no limits? Are there no lines some people will not cross? How many innocent people must die? Dear friends, 0 civilian casualties, 0. This must be the target. 51 is a number that defines failure. 51 instances in which the sites have failed. And the larger that number is, the greater the failure. There is only one benchmark to judge progress, only one indicator of success. There is only one target worth aiming at: 0 civilian casualties. 0 children injured in Staromikhailivka, 0 civilian monitoring officers injured or killed, 0 amputees, 0 workers at critical civilian infrastructures facilities injured, 0 farmers killed in the fields, 0. Stop targeting the civilian population. The target is 0 civilian casualties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Now it's time for questions. Dear colleagues, if you have questions, you are welcome to ask them.
Crimean News Agency. Last week, the SMM reported that most likely from the 14th of April, the pumping stations will be turned off. And 1 week passed. My question: whether the mission is following up on this situation at the Yuncom mine.
You repeat the last part of your question again? It came through broken. The English version, please.
I would like to clarify whether the mission is following up on the developments around the Yuncom mine, and whether the pumping station were turned off and the flooding is occurring right now at the mine. Can you confirm this information?
The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission is aware about concerns expressed to us vis-à-vis the Yuncom mine. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission has also been in contact with those in effective control of that mine. And the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission had been visiting the facilities yesterday of the Yuncom mine. The task of the mission is to report on facts, and all of its facts are reported in its daily reports available on our website in English, Ukrainian and Russian language, including with references to our observations relating to the Yuncom mine.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. If there is no more questions, let's finish for today.
Okay, thank you.